Hi y'all, moving right along into introductions and conclusions, which is chapter 9 of your text. Today we're going to talk about the pieces and parts that go into creating solid intros and conclusions, all of which are pieces that I'm going to be looking for moving forward into our speaking assignment, specifically our upcoming speech 1. So first of all, let's talk a little bit about introducing and concluding your speech. These pieces are often overlooked, especially conclusions. Sometimes conclusions are rushed or even forgotten. So I'm going to challenge you to really focus on preparing the content and then making sure that it's delivered to the best of your ability. Intros and conclusions are often written before the body of the speech or just in what you would think would be logical order: intro, body, conclusion. And I'm going to challenge you to write your central idea and your main points first, and then go back and write the best intro and conclusion you can based on what you come up with in the body. So see how that works for you. Write your main points first and then do the intro and conclusion. You really want to focus on starting strong and ending strong. The audience remembers what we say first and last best, so make sure it's structured well. Okay, so getting into the first part of an intro, we always want to gain the audience's attention immediately. So the first thing that comes out of our mouth is going to be our attention getter. Thinking about that, to be sure that you're avoiding any garbage words going in there. So you might say, a lot of students say, all right, so, and then they start into their attention getter. Well, your attention getter really was all right, so. So make sure that you are really structuring that attention getter right from the get-go as you have planned. Just start right in your delivery. Don't introduce yourself again, it's not needed. We're going to go ahead and go through and introduce ourselves in our groups prior to speech 1. So just jump right into your attention getter as you've planned for your speech. And the key here, you want to gain favorable attention. You don't want to turn your audience off to your topic, and you want your attention getter to be very relevant and applicable to your topic. Here are some examples of effective attention getters that your textbook elaborates on a little bit more and provides some other options as well. But illustrations are anecdotes, so these are stories, and it's really cool when students start, especially with a personal story, even hypothetical stories, to draw the audience into your topic. Some key or cool things you can do with illustrations: you might tell a whole brief story, very brief again, in your intro. You might tell part of a story in your intro and weave the rest through your outline and end in your conclusion. Or you might bookend and say part of a story to catch attention and then tell the end of the story or resolve the story in the conclusion to bookend the content of your speech. You might use startling facts or statistics, and I have this down here. It's from Buzzle.com, so I'm not even sure it's true, but it's a fun example. It says, studies indicate that in a hospital, an average of 12 newborns may be given to the wrong parents daily. So that's a very startling statistic where you're like, what? And you want to hear more, right? So thinking of those kinds of things, and is there a statistic or a fact that could help draw your audience in statistically? You can use quotes as long as you keep them short and make sure that they're really relevant to the topic at hand. Mindful rhetorical questions, so you might be trying to get people to think about a topic that they don't noodle on often or that they might not even know about. References to events or other speeches, you can use appropriate humor. Personal references or refer to an occasion. So this might be, a lot of students will do their procedural speech 2 on how to carve a pumpkin, because in the fall that's typically around Halloween, things like that. Ineffective attention getters are inappropriate humor. We're all adults and we should know the difference between appropriate and inappropriate humor, right? Irrelevant information, so maybe you have a shocking statistic that you want to share to get to gain attention, but it really has nothing to do with your topic. Let's avoid those kind of things. Loud for the sake of loud, and I'm not kidding when I tell you this. I've had a student come in and walk up to his peer's desk to start his presentation and slam his hand on the desk and said, "Do I have your attention?" So loud for the sake of loud, that's not an effective attention getter. Focus on some content. Video and audio. Now, I'm okay with video and audio as long as you keep it about 30 seconds of content. For instance, if you even use 30 seconds for a 60 to 90 minute or a 60 to 90 second speech for speech 1, that's a little long. So make sure if it's speech 1, it's probably 10 to 15 seconds. Make it relative to the amount of time you have in your speech. Keep things short. All right, so we know we have to always gain the audience's attention first, right? Then we have these steps 2 through 4, and I call this the mushy middle of the introduction. That means that steps 2 through 4 are kind of interchangeable. You can do them whenever you please, just wherever they fit best in your intro. There's no specific order here, but just knowing they have to come before your attention getter and after your attention getter and before your preview, which we'll talk about here in a second. So you want to gain the audience's goodwill, and this means you have to give the audience a reason to listen and relate to them a little bit. So they're going to be asking, audiences are selfish, which is okay, right? How does this concern me? So I'm sitting here right now listening to you. Give me a reason to listen and really pay attention. So describe how the topic affects us, making sure that it also affects you, you're passionate about it, but then you're putting that onto the audience and giving them a reason to listen. I'll give you an example. I had a student that wanted to teach the audience how to fishtail braid hair, and she came to me and she said, "Bree, I'm not really sure how I'm going to connect to the guys in the class." She's thinking this topic is not going to relate to the majority, maybe just the girls. And I said, well, is there a way that we can connect with the guys? And we thought about it for a second, and I said, well, most of these guys are probably going to get married. They probably have sisters or aunts or even daughters later in their life, maybe even now. So can you connect that and say maybe one day you'll want to French braid, fishtail braid your daughter's hair? So there's always some kind of connection that can be made. It's a little tricky at times, but be creative there. All right, also part of gaining goodwill that goes into this 2 and 4 is establishing credibility. And this is the audience's perception of a speaker as competent, trustworthy, knowledgeable, and dynamic. So it's your credibility as a speaker to talk on a topic. So for instance, my procedural speech 2, when I was in college and in public speaking, I did how to throw a curveball in fast pitch. And I have taught pitching lessons and played all the way through my youth and even a little bit in college, so I had the credibility to speak on that topic. So it's my credibility to talk about something. Really making sure you're establishing that, especially moving into speech 2. You can establish credibility non-verbally and verbally. So non-verbally would be our professional dress. Verbally would be that actual statement. Non-verbally, again, our confidence and all those kinds of things as well. You can do it internally and externally, right? So be explicit. Previous knowledge or experience, personal or professional interest, research done on the topic before the speech. All those can play into our credibility statement, that ethos that we want to establish. So you want to state the purpose of your speech. Introduce the subject by stating your central idea, your thesis. So yes, you're going to write that central idea, that thesis at the top of your outline. I have a Speech 1 example to show you too in our Speech 1 assignment video, so be sure to watch that. You're going to state that central idea, that goal of your speech at the very top of your paper, and then you're also going to write that exact same sentence in the intro somewhere. And you want to get this out fairly quickly to tell your audience exactly what they can expect out of your speech. All right, and lastly here, you want to preview your main points. This is always the final component of your intro, often included in or immediately following your central idea. So I have included in here. That means that you can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. You might include your preview in your central idea and combine steps 4 and 5. But knowing this preview is always going to be the last sentence of your intro. So this is almost like a major signpost, a major transition, right? It's telling us exactly what is to come in the speech in a certain order. So, for instance, if you put steps 4 and 5 together, you might say something like, checking your credit report online is a simple process with 3 easy steps. Find a reputable website, enter your financial information, and interpret your results. And then your transition right away would say, let's begin with finding a reputable credit reporting site. So you could have done these in 2 separate sentences and covered steps 4 and 5, or you can put them together and have it all be one statement. You see what I'm saying? Perfect. All right, now let's move on to our conclusions. So first of all, you always want to use verbal and nonverbal cues to signal the end of the speech. And in terms of nonverbal cues, that might be where you've been walking around a little bit, or maybe you shifted to one side of your screen and shifted to the other side of your screen to deliver certain points. And then maybe you step back into the middle of the screen to signal that you are at your concluding statements. You want to use verbal cues as well. And guys, this might just be a personal preference, but I think it's pretty lazy to say in conclusion, and I'd like you to try and avoid using in conclusion. Be a bit more creative to signal the end of your speech and let us know that you're moving into a summary. So you want to present any final appeals. You might ask the audience to take action, specifically in our persuasive speeches. You might ask the audience to understand. You might use recency, which we'll get to in some of our organization, but that just means people remember what they hear last. So you might have a final appeal that is very much included in the conclusion to really end strongly, right? Summarize and close. So you want to restate that central idea and summarize the main points. Provide closure, the cue to the audience that this speech sounds finished. And I call this our clincher statement. So you never want to be in a situation where the audience is waiting to clap and kind of unsure if your speech is finished. So be really sure to just make that clear that you're done speaking and end very strongly. All right, effective closure. You might use whatever you said in your intro. So maybe you reiterate a quote. Maybe you answer that mindful question or ask it again. Maybe you reference the introduction and end the story or tie back to the statistic, right? Challenges or appeals to the audience there. Okay. And that is all for now on intros and conclusions. So I will see you guys next week.